Imagine if, in modern times, let's say the role of DC's Sergeant Rock went to the literal Rock himself, Dwayne Johnson. Imagine that he was given creative control over the high-budget, state-of-the-art project despite having no idea who Sergeant Rock even was. Finally, imagine that he decided to make it in the vein of all of his films, hiring Kevin Hart to be a sidekick and royally pissing off fans of the source material along the way. That's probably the best modern analogy I can come up with for what happened to 1995's Judge Dredd, a film that had crew members allegedly taking bets on their director's life expectancy, an NC-17 rating, and Sylvester Stallone screaming, "I am the law." This is what happened to Judge Dredd. Judge Dredd debuted in 1995, a year packed with iconic films. At the time, the superhero craze hadn't fully kicked in, making it somewhat of an outlier, a big-budget adaptation of a lesser-known comic book character. First appearing in 1977's 2000 AD, Judge Dredd was an ultra-strict law enforcer in a dystopian future where crime ran rampant. In Mega City 1, judges acted as judge, jury, and executioner to keep the streets in order. Created by John Wagner and Carlos Esquerra, the character had a cult following and wasn't exactly Batman or Superman in terms of mainstream recognition. Despite this, Judge Dredd was greenlit with a hefty $90 million budget, which would amount to about $200 million today when adjusted for inflation. It was produced by Walt Disney Studios' subsidiary Hollywood Pictures and Synergy Pictures, and distributed by Buena Vista. The screenplay was credited to Commando's Stephen E. D'Souza and Terminator 2's William Wisher, with several other writers involved behind the scenes. Originally, and a bit ironic given the grand scheme of things, Arnold Schwarzenegger was considered for the lead role, with Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey director Peter Hewitt attached. However, Schwarzenegger passed, leading the studio to seek out a new director to work with their new choice, Sylvester Stallone. One wonders if there wasn't some kind of behind-the-scenes trickery going on here, such as when Schwarzenegger tricked his rival into making Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. Several big names, including Richard Donner, Rennie Harlan, and Richard Stanley were considered for the job, but it ultimately went to British director Danny Cannon. Cannon was a huge Judge Dredd fan, so much so that he even won a 1987 contest for the best fan poster. A fan poster that imagined Ridley Scott as the director and Harrison Ford as Dredd himself. Ironically, once production began, Cannon likely wished that the star that he was dealing with actually was Harrison Ford, or that he'd taken the option to direct Die Hard with a Vengeance with Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson instead. As he often did in his heyday, Stallone took on a massive amount of creative control during the production. A hands-on approach that had worked many times before with great success on obvious properties like Rocky and Rambo, that this time clashed heavily with the source material. Hell, just check out our Cobra video to see what kind of shenanigans Stallone got up to. One major issue of contention was something Halo and Master Chief's fans can sympathize with: the helmet. See, in the comics, Dredd never removes it because his anonymity reflects his role as an emotionless enforcer. But Stallone didn't feel like that should matter. And to quote Rick Dalton,
"If you got me covered up in all this junk, how's the audience gonna know it's me?"
As a result, Stallone would get his way because, again, I am the law, and would spend most of the movie helmet-free, much to the dismay of hardcore Judge Dredd fans. Overall, Stallone's rendition of the character dealt with far more interpersonal conflict and emotion than was ever part of the origin. Stallone also insisted on a more widely accessible slapstick type of comedy rather than the darker Verhoeven-esque tone of its comics. This was driven further by the casting of his Demolition Man co-star and Three Seashells user Rob Schneider in the role of Fergie. No, not that Fergie. This was a part that the studio originally had envisioned Joe Pesci for, if you can even believe that. In the comics, Fergie is a muscular brute who ends up dying heroically and helping Dredd save the day. Here, he's no more than a whiny, squeaky wheel, Jar Jar Binks light, if you will. Impressed with the original wardrobe given to him by the studio and comparing it to a trash removal outfit or something baggy that an intern at a bad hospital would wear, Stallone enlisted his friend, fashion designer Gianni Versace, to revamp the look. The result was something that he was extremely happy with, despite it being 4 layers deep and requiring copious amounts of Johnson's baby powder to get through the day. Stallone also adorned a pair of bright blue contacts on the set, meant to emphasize the bloodline connection between Dredd, his father Judge Fargo, played by the legendary Max von Sydow, and his villainous brother Rico, played by Armand Assante. Assante was noticeably smaller than Stallone, but made up for the obvious size differences with sheer intensity, delivering a performance jacked up with Shakespearean villainy. One that always reminds me of The Sopranos' Richie April character, meaning that you just want to punch him in the face, a lot, and hard. The wonderful Diane Lane played Judge Hershey, who in the comics is a successful judge and colleague, but in yet another 90s-style Stallone flick deviation, was rewritten as Dredd's love interest. Stop me or my mom will shoot. I mean, if you've heard this one before. That's not a thing they ever do in the comics. Director Danny Cannon insisted that the film be shot mostly in England, where the character had originated. They enlisted the help of special effects company Massive Illusion to bring the futuristic hellscape of Mega City 1 to life. To do so, an 11-foot tall, 20-foot wide model was created out of plastic, wood, and plexiglass. The set used elaborate miniatures of everything, all the way down to crafting miniature set lights to illuminate the city, topped off with a fogger machine to simulate an urban haze. To make the buildings throughout the sweeping city look more authentic, they created photographs to put inside the model windows, giving them an impressive layer of depth. Practical effects were used for the robotic ABC Warrior via hydraulic animatronics, and the prosthetic-heavy Mean Machine Angel through prosthetic makeup. This all equated to a level of realism and detail often missing in today's CGI-laden films. It's something to behold that even the staunchest critics of Judge Dredd were able to appreciate it upon the film's release. The sounds of Judge Dredd were no less complicated. Initially, David Arnold was hired to compose the score, then replaced by all-time great Jerry Goldsmith, who had to leave to compose Congo and First Night after the film ran over schedule. Alan Silvestri was then brought aboard the Mega City Titanic, only to have to re-record portions of his score to match what had been heavily edited in post-production. On the bright side, The Cure, fresh off their hit song Burn from the Crow soundtrack, created a song just for the film titled Dread Song, which plays as the credits roll. So that's pretty rad. On the flip side, a band called Manic Street Preachers offered a song called Judge Yourself that turned out being the last song recorded at the time with their guitar player Richie Edwards, who had mysteriously gone missing. The song was pulled from the soundtrack but later released by the band. Also missing, the entire tone and feel of the Judge Dredd comic book that this film was supposed to be based on. But it wasn't always that way. You might be shocked to find out that this rather glib film was given an NC-17 rating. Not only that, it was given that 5 times when submitted to the MPAA. An example of the darker and truer to source material cut that the director and original creator had in mind for the film. Nevertheless, Stallone and the studio then cut the film even further, now hellbent on a PG-13 rating that they would never get. Stallone blames this on the baggage that he brought to the table. Having been known for the ultra-violent Rambo franchise, he complained that it was ridiculous films like Congo were given a PG-13 rating when Dredd had little to no gore at all. Well, by the time he was done with it at least. Much to the director and screenwriter's dismay, Stallone would cut entire sequences from the film in an attempt to achieve his desired rating, from ABC Warrior ripping off Judge Griffin's arms and legs to the film's ending with Judge murdering clone judges. It was all cut in an effort that would leave Cannon vowing to never work with another big name in Hollywood again. Stallone, who also called the film his biggest mistake, still holds strong on his feelings. He would double down years later by saying that the problem was that there wasn't enough comedy and humorous sequences in the film, that they shouldn't have been trying to make it Hamlet, when it's more like Hamlet and eggs. Oh God.
Before we continue with our video, here's a reminder to click the Store tab on any of our JoBlo channels and browse our collection of the latest and freshest designs in our merch store. Go get you some.
Stallone blamed the miscommunication on the director, claiming Cannon to be in over his head. He shared a story that Cannon once jumped down from his director's chair screaming, "Fear me! Everyone should fear me!" and claiming the crew were taking bets on how long the director would stay alive. Judge Dredd creator John Wagner would weigh in with his disappointment with the final product as well. He rightly claimed that the movie really had nothing to do with the character that he had written, that it told the wrong story and tried to do far too much. This was a shame, especially considering all the production had going for it, both with budget and special effects. Judge Dredd was released in the United States in June of 1995. But it was the films Batman Forever and Apollo 13 which would dominate the box office. The film would pull in less than $35 million in North America and end at $113 million worldwide. It was also greeted by the mostly dismal critical reception, with critics mostly praising the special effects and nothing else. The film received some science fiction and special effects nominations at the Saturn Awards that year, but even that came alongside Stallone being nominated for Worst Actor at the Razzies. Is it too much blame being placed at the foot of the beloved all-time great action star? Well, that's for you to decide. He was undoubtedly mistaken in his desires to change the character so far from its source material. But it was a confusing time. It was early in the superhero genre craze, yet late in the action superstar era. Stallone was just trying to make another great Sylvester Stallone film, which is clearly what the studio wanted him to do. So on one hand, he was just doing the job that he thought he was hired to do. But the problem with Stallone being the law in this situation is that it meant that the character of Judge Dredd couldn't be. The room wasn't big enough for the both of them. So much so that they even had to release 2 posters for the film. One adorning Judge Dredd in full helmet and regalia, and another featuring Stallone in dress blues about to fire a gun. He might as well have been Demolition Man's John Spartan. We would finally see our great Judge Dredd film when Carl Urban took on the character in 2012's Dredd, where he was adamant that they stay true to the source material and leave that damn helmet on this time. The film kicked major ass and was wildly successful amongst fans, yet for some reason that none of us will ever fucking understand, was an even bigger failure at the box office than Stallone's foray into the character. Still yet, Dredd has amassed an amazing cult following, us included, who are steadfast in our hopes for sequel redemption one day. Cause God knows Stallone's Dredd won't be getting that. And that, my friends, is what happened to Judge Dredd.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.